Bring back rock. Hey everybody, it's Dean. Welcome to Bring Back Rock. Today it's your turn to tell me your underrated albums from 1988, or the ones I missed anyway. If you want to see my underrated albums from 1988, please go back, check that video out from about a month ago. All right, couple things to start with. First, I kind of made a mistake on my 1988 videos. I started talking about Stripers, In God We Trust, and then instead I kind of went off and started talking about To Hell with the Devil a little bit, and I never got back to In God We Trust. Just to mention, In God We Trust came out in 1988. It did go gold, but it kind of failed to reach the level of To Hell with the Devil, which went platinum. This one still went gold, so still, commercial success, but none of the songs charted, made the top 40 or anything, none of the ballads. So In God We Trust by Striper is also one that you guys said was underrated. Another one that I had on my list to talk about as kind of a breakthrough band that year that I accidentally left out, you guys said was underrated. That is Britny Fox's debut album. They arrived pretty heavy with Long Way to Love, and then Girl School was played on MTV a lot. Good song, good video. If you like Cinderella especially, check out both the first two albums by Britny Fox. Still had another great album after that, but Bite Down Hard, but check out the first two albums by Britny Fox, and the debut came out in 1988. Another one that you guys said was underrated that I didn't really think was underrated was Joe Satriani's Dreaming number 11. Crush of Love, I believe, was the rock single. I just find it went gold. So I just think that somebody that does mostly instrumental music, it's kind of hard to break through and hard to even get a gold record. So I kind of consider that a success, but you guys said that was underrated. Then there's a couple bands that I really should have had on my list and I accidentally left off. The first one is an album I absolutely love. I was listening to the other day and I thought, man, I gotta listen to this album some more. It's really good. The band is 220 Volt out of Sweden. Eye to Eye is the the album. It's also one of the best songs on there. The whole album is really, really good. I remember walking into my record store back in the day and talking to the guy who owned it, and he's like, check out this band 220 Volt. I'm like, who are they like? He said they're like AC/DC, and I'm like, Rhino Bucket AC/DC? He's like, no, not as much as Rhino Bucket is like AC/DC, but I personally do not really hear much AC/DC in 220 Volt, but I do hear a killer rock band with some big hooks, not the huge produced choruses, but just catchy songs that you want to sing along with. Eye to Eye is one of them, and then the other, which is the title track, and just a bunch. Just if you're not familiar with 220 Volt, I highly, highly recommend checking out Eye to Eye. It's a great record. The other one I left off that I shouldn't have was Dirty Looks, Cool from the Wire. Really good album. This one does sound a bit like AC/DC. Just great AC/DC-like hard rock. Oh Ruby was a single. The album, I believe, went to 134 on Billboard. They did have some success, but not huge success. This album really should have been a lot bigger. It's Not the Way You Rock is another great song on that record, and that was in the film Johnny Be Good, which had a pretty decent soundtrack, but was, in my opinion, not a real great movie. But Cool to the Wire, Dirty Looks. Jason McMaster from Dangerous Toys and a bunch of other stuff is now fronting the band, so check them out. The next one that you guys said was underrated was King's X, Out of the Silent Planet, which is actually taken from that name is taken from a C.S. Lewis book. Really good album. It was their debut, kind of. Their debut as King's X. They had another album out under a different name. It went to 144 on Billboard album charts, and a lot of you, I don't know how to describe King's X. I'd probably say progressive metal, but King's X was underrated by you guys in 1988. Next up, we have House of Lords. Now, House of Lords, their debut album, Gene Simmons started working with them. He didn't like the name Jafria. They did have a member change or two. They changed the name to House of Lords, so this is actually their debut as House of Lords, but it contains a lot of songs that would have been on the third Jafria album. Greg Giuffria, of course, was the form that one. It did go to 100. Excuse me. It did go to number 78 on the album charts. So it had some success, but it definitely wasn't a hugely successful record. There are a lot of albums from you guys here, so I'm kind of zipping through them a little bit quick. We're going to Crimson Glory next with Transcendence, which was their second album. Crimson Glory, one of those bands that has a very dedicated fan base, even though they never really broke through huge. Like I said, second album, kind of power metal, kind of progressive metal. Transcendence, underrated by you guys in 1988. Another one that made your list is a band that is perpetually underrated. It's Fastway. Fastway released the album On Target in 1988. There were some member changes. It was their first album without Dave King on vocals, so it had a little bit different sound. It also was a little more keyboard heavy, a little more maybe commercial than the last couple were. It was also Lee Hart was the new singer. It was their fifth album. So you guys said Fastway On Target was underrated in 1988. The next one is another one that I probably should have had on my list and forgot. If you want to know more about them, go check out my video on them. The band is Lillian. It was their debut album. It was produced by Rat's Robin Crosby. The biggest song off of there, probably Dream of a Lifetime. Really good album. Really good debut. They released a couple of great albums all in a row there and are still performing today with different members. So Lillian X, self-titled album, underrated in 1988. Next up, we have a band that I only discovered recently, but I liked what I heard enough that I want to go check a lot more out. So it might be a band that you missed out on also, and that is China. China released their self-titled debut in 1988. I believe they're from Switzerland, and they had a lot of success there. I think this album went to number 6. They had more success with the subsequent album. They had a singer change after the first album, but I think that this first album's a little bit heavier, a little more rockin' than the next one. I would check out China's self-titled debut if you're not familiar with it. Next up, we have, well, let me say one more thing about China. China, like I said, they started kind of going through vocalists, but one of the people that actually filled in for some shows was Mark Storis of Crocus, and he actually is on a live album of theirs doing the vocals, so that's kind of interesting. And Crocus is the next album on your underrated albums from 1988. Heart Attack came out in 1988. It was their 10th album, and it was their first on MCA. So I had heard from the band, it was described as an album by a band in crisis. I don't know if they didn't know what direction to go, but it is a pretty good album. If you like Crocus, or like, I kind of think a lot of times they sound AC/DC-ish, but Crocus, Heart Attack, it came out in 1988, and you guys said it was underrated. Next up, Pantera, power metal. Now this was the first album with Phil Anselmo on vocals, taken over from Terry Glaze, who later went on to do Lord Tracy, which I'm sure that album will make my underrated albums, wow, for that year. Anyway, Phil Anselmo was on vocals. It's definitely a metal album. They still had the glam look, but they're definitely metal. One of the songs on here was produced and written by Mark Ferrari of Keel, and that song was Proud to Be Loud, which was originally put together for Keel's self-titled third album, but it didn't make the album. Keel later did record it on their Back in Action LP, but you could hear it first on Pantera's Power Metal, so underrated by you guys in 1988. Next up, I have Raven. There's Nothing Exceeds Like Excess. This was their first album on Combat Records after leaving Atlantic Records. Atlantic was always trying to push them to be more commercial. This is kind of a return to their harder sound. Nothing Exceeds Like Excess. It was their 7th album, first on Combat, and you guys said that it was an underrated album in 1988. All right, the next band you guys have listed as underrated is Hurricane, the album Over the Edge. If you're not familiar with Hurricane, Kelly Hansen is the singer. He's been fronting Foreigner for a very long time. They had a strong Quiet Riot connection at the time. Carlos Cavazo, guitarist for Quiet Riot, and Rudy Sarzo, bassist for Quiet Riot. He's in Whitesnake at the time, but their brothers were in the band. Robert Sarzo, but instead of bass, he was playing guitar, and Tony Cavazzo was playing bass. So they were both in it. It was produced by Bob Ezrin. It went to 92, I believe, on the album charts, and you guys thought it was underrated. It is a pretty good album. Later on, Doug Aldridge took over on guitar for the band on the next record. All right, who we got next? We got a band called Dogs d'Amour in the Dynamite Jet Saloon, I believe is the name of the album. It was released in 1988. They had 3 minor hits in England at the time. It was on China Records and did pretty well. They never really broke through here in the States like I thought they might have. I don't know the best way to describe the best way that I've heard is a combination of the Rolling Stones, Faces, and Hanoi Rocks. And that's actually not too bad a description if you want to go check out Dogs d'Amour. Next up, we have a band called Nasty Savage. Now, the reason I'm including this one is because I have a Nasty Savage album and nobody else I know ever talks about them. The name of the album is Abstract Reality. They are from Florida, and they had a pretty good following, and also pretty productive few years though. They released 3 albums, I believe, and a EP in like 4 or 5 years there. So very productive. Abstract Reality, an EP released in 1988 by Nasty Savage. All right, the next album we have up is a band that I'd heard of before. I don't know if I read about them or one of you guys suggested it to me, but the band is Alien. They released their self-titled album in 1988. They had a lot of success in their homeland of Sweden, where they did a cover of the song Only One Woman, which stayed #1 for 6 weeks in Sweden. They're a lot more maybe commercial, keyboard heavy, AOR type of rock, not super heavy, but Alien released their self-titled debut in 1988, and you guys thought it was underrated, along with Vicious Rumors' Digital Dictator. That was on Shrapnel Records, and it led to their signing of a major label. Metal band. One of you guys thought Digital Dictator was highly underrated. Also, Vinnie Moore was their guitarist, not on this album, but at one point Vinnie Moore was their guitar player, so we got that. Next up, a band out of Canada called Brighton Rock, and they released an album. It was, I believe, their second or third album, Take a Deep Breath. It was gold in Canada. It was their most successful record in Canada. Made it to #22 on the charts on Warner Brothers. Now, pretty good glam hard rock record and a band and album. And they decided after this album to lose their keyboard player and go a little bit heavier. They thought the keyboards were softening their music a little bit too much. So after this album, they 86 the keyboard player. But Brighton Rock, Take a Deep Breath was released in 1988, and you guys said it was underrated. Next up, we have a band called Stage Dolls, who had a minor hit in the U.S. Love Cries went to number 46 on the charts. The album, I believe, went to number 118. It was on Chrysalis Records, and they got a pretty big promotional push. They didn't really land for me. They're a little more AOR, a little softer than I was used to listening to at the time. But they did have some success, and you guys thought they were an underrated band from '88. All right, next up we have a classic artist, Ted Nugent. If you can't lick 'em, lick 'em. This is the first studio album where he did all the lead vocals on the album. It went only to 112 on the album chart, so not a huge success for him. It did include a song that was co-written by John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora called That's the Story of Love. So it's a good solid hard rock album. We kind of know what to expect from Ted Nugent. This was also the last album he recorded before joining the Damn Yankees. So after this one, he kind of took a break from being a solo artist and joined Damn Yankees. Next up, Hellstar, Distant Thunder. Distant Thunder, kind of an influential album. This was their first album after leaving Combat Records, and it was on Metal Blade. Combination between power metal and thrash. Kind of influential band. Hellstar, Distant Thunder, underrated and released in 1988. And you guys thought it was definitely underrated. All right, next up we have Testament, New Order. It was their breakthrough album. It went to 136 on the charts. Funny thing about this one was they turned it into the record company and it was under 40 minutes long. They had it in their contract that they had to have at least 40 minutes of music. So they had to go back in, They had to record some instrumentals, and they did an Aerosmith cover as well, Nobody's Fault, which is a great song, by the way. And you read the lyrics, it fits the band. It's kind of a darker lyrically song by Aerosmith. So Nobody's Fault by Aerosmith, and the instrumentals helped put them over 40 minutes, and that helped Testament break through. And there you have it, underrated album. Next up, I have King Cobra 3. King Cobra is kind of on its last legs. The only members left were David Michael Phillips and Carmine Appice, or Appice. I get the two last names confused. Anyway, and Carmine Appice. The rest of the band came from the band Northrop, including the vocalist, Jeff Northrop. And Carmine Appice's wife at the time is on the album cover. So there you go. King Cobra 3, you guys said, was underrated in 1988. Next up, kind of a popular band with you guys, and that is Loudness. Loudness released an EP only in Japan in 1988 called Jealousy. It was their last tour. After the tour, the vocalist left. I'm going to read the name because I'm going to mispronounce it probably anyway, but Minoru Miyahara? That might or might not be right. But anyway, he left after the tour, and Michael Vescara took over on vocals. I like Michael from Obsession. All right, next up we have Betsy's self-titled album, Betsy, B-E-T-S-Y. They were the band Bitch, same band as was on the last Bitch record, but they changed their name to Betsy. Betsy Weiss, or Betsy Bitch, is the singer. Their album went to 133, I believe, on the record charts. I could be off by 1 or 2 on that, but I think it was 133. They kind of lost their S&M image for this album, went more commercial, tried to break through, didn't really work. They went back to being Bitch after this record. But Betsy, self-titled record released in 1988, underrated by you guys. And the last one, Odyssey by Yngwie Malmsteen. Joe Lynn Turner was on vocals. Yngwie had 3 different vocalists on the last 3 records. This came after his car crash, and some people thought maybe his playing wasn't quite healed when he did this record. But it went to number 40 on the album charts, and you guys said it was an underrated album from 1988. And that should wrap it up. There was a lot of records I just talked about there, at least I think 27 or 28 records. So I kind of went fast. I appreciate you guys for keeping up with me, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in. So we'll catch up with you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.